Yo, 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 welcome to Crate 808 and our latest installment of the Greatest 3-Album Run series, where we discuss which rap act had the best 3-album run in the 90s. And today we have a very special guest bringing a very special group to break down. Yes, we're going to be talking OutKast with the former editor-in-chief of HipHopDX, nationally broadcast TV producer and founder of Company Man Media. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the company man himself, Justin Hunte, who is in the house. How are you doing, Justin, man?
Word up. Active and awesome. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Good to see you, man. We've not talked to you since Bone Thugs, since we did Bone Thugs, man.
Bone Thugs and Harmony. Right up there. I got it up there somewhere.
Boom. I love that. I love that DX break.
That was great.
Yeah, man. That was a great chat. Got some good... well, actually, I think Bone actually themselves like that, so that's quite cool.
Yeah, they rocked with it.
Yeah, man. That was quite sweet. But yes, man, today it's OutKast. We're going to dive into the run. But I got to ask you, I ask everyone when they come on, man. Justin, what's the least hip-hop thing you've done in the last 24 hours, my friend?
The least hip-hop thing? Last 24 hours? What is the least hip-hop thing I've done in the last 24 hours? I don't know, man. I'm pretty hip-hop. Pretty hip-hop 24 hours. Pretty hip-hop 24 hours.
I like that.
Depending on how you look at it, I'll say this. Last night was the first episode where I premiered of season 3 of Court Cam, which is the show I'm a producer on. So this is the first episode that I worked on as a producer. And so the show looks at all of the outrageous moments caught on camera in courtrooms around the world. Maybe that's not that hip hop. So let's say that.
Let's say that. You know, congrats, man. Congrats, man.
Thank you very much.
Very good, man. Love that. I know you've been putting in the work, man. You've been putting in the work, so I love that. So today, man, the 3 albums we'll be talking about: Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik from '94, ATLiens 96, and then just cap it with Aquemini 98, man. I mean, what are you saying to that run, Justin?
I think OutKast is one of those groups, because when I was going back through their catalog, you could pretty much do this with any 3 albums out of their first 5. Like, you could have the same conversation from ATLiens, Aquemini, Stankonia.
Yeah.
You can do it again with Aquemini, Stankonia, Speaker Box Level Below.
True.
You know what I mean? And I think that speaks to their greatness, but also their penchant for evolving. And so in 1994, when Southern Playalistic came out, it really was a pinnacle moment for the South in a number of ways. The South was, prior to that, outside of maybe Ghetto Boys, outside of maybe Scarface, the South had a reputation for being dance music, had a reputation for being, excessive, misogynistic, almost solely, definitely lyrically deficient in comparison to things that were coming out in the East Coast and out West at that point in time. And so OutKast, with that album, Southern Playalistic, really cemented that the South was so much more than what it was perceived to be at that point in time. The success of that album, we've heard the lore at this point. They won Best New Artist at the Source Awards that year. Both sides booed them. The whole audience booed them. All the New York artists booed them. All the West Coast artists booed them.
Yeah. And
it was a big year for, Bad Boy, and it was a big year for Death Row. A lot of people thought, Snoop should have won something, similar with some Bad Boy artists. And so when OutKast won, everybody was like, no, everyone booed just straight up, and Andre got up there and said, the South got something to say. Yeah. That's all I got to say. And those words have been, at this point, a point of pride for not only people from the South, I would say, but honestly for anyone who comes from that underdog narrative within hip hop, which is hip hop's story in itself.
Yeah.
So, I can't imagine what Southern hip hop or hip hop in the South would even look like today without Southern Playalistic, and especially without that moment.
For you, personally, for yourself, do you remember the first time you heard that album, or even when you heard OutKast? Do you remember that moment, or around about that time?
Yeah, the first time I ever heard him was what song was that? Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik, I think, was probably the first song. No, Players Ball.
Players Ball.
Players Ball was the first time I heard that I ever heard from them, and I think it was on. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was on like a Christmas album.
It was, yeah.
That the Face Records put out that year.
Which is amazing. Which is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember the video. I mean, it was just like, it felt like, I mean, this is going to sound very disrespectful, but it sounded like, it reminded me a lot of Tribe, but with a like more fluid style, you know, with like a more effortless delivery, you know, between the two. It sounded, I grew up in the South at that time, and it was just like, you know, it was that moment in my high school. You know, was it middle school? I think it might have been middle school at that point, when that came out, you know, and, you know, the thing I think about when I think about that album so much is that between Players Ball and Southern Playalistic, but then like some of the darker songs at the end, like Hootie Hoo is what really grabbed me, you know. Tight Like Hallway, Smoked Out Always.
Amazing.
You know, listening to Andre talk about, he had this one verse on there where he's rapping, and it sounds like that scene from Menace to Society, where the girl calls up Kane and is like, yeah, you know, I'm pregnant. He's like, so? You know, Andre had a line on there. He goes, about 2 weeks later, she called me with some bullshit, talking about her period late. Guess what I did? Click. Couldn't be me. No, not me. You know, I mean, it was really like a colloquial thing, I think, at that moment to have that type of perspective. I'm not necessarily saying that it should be a pride point, but I'm saying it definitely captured the spirit of, you know, where a lot of people were coming from in that year.
I totally agree. I love that breakdown of this album, because when I look at it, they're so different. As in, for me, it automatically made me feel very West Coast parts of this album, and even ATLiens. There were parts where it felt ATLiens went a little bit more experimental, but I think with Southern Playalistic, I got that kind of funky West Coast vibe. But they have this kind of native tongues almost, like you said with Tribe. There is that native tongues-esque element to them. I remember that sticking out to me, where I was like, I can't put these guys in the holes I've been in the categories I've been given as a kid. They don't fit in any one of them. They fit in all of them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you know, and I think part of the native tongues feel that at least I had came from the fact that Organized Noise, you know, it wasn't just OutKast. You know, it was Goody Mob and Organized Noise. Goody Mob had a big was on this album. Get Up, Get Out was another high point on that project. It was produced by Rico Wade and you know, the Slippy Brown, the whole Organized Noise team over there. And you know, it really was a community, a collective, a culture that all started in one basement. And it just, everything bled through that project so seamlessly. So many different personalities, so many different perspectives. You know, I definitely think it deserved to be Best New Artist. I think they definitely deserved that Best New Artist in that year. But it's funny though, like when I'm a huge OutKast fan, but when I think about their catalog, at least with the first 5 albums, actually you say this without their entire catalog, all 6 albums, every album can either be the best album or the second worst album. You know what I mean? Like, depending on who you are and how you feel. Every album is either the best. It could be the best album they made. It could be the second worst album they made, depending on how how you look at it. And so for me, like, I love Southern Playalistic, but for me, you know, that is really the testament to how great their 3-album run is, because that's also one of my least favorite OutKast albums. Like, Idlewild is my least favorite. You know what I mean? Like, that's just, it's just what it is. I think that I don't think that's controversial. I don't think nobody thinks we take a shot. But Southern Playalistic is actually my second least favorite, because they were so young, right? They were young. You could see and feel some of the youth, arguably some of the juvenile perspectives in their music coming through that album. Maybe at that point in time, it was one of the more well-rounded, developed pieces of thought. But in comparison to where they go and where they get after that, it hasn't grown with me over the years in the same way as their additional projects have. And I think that is really a testament to how great they are. Because there's very few artists I can say that about.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, the way you said that, because Southern Playalistic to me is my second favourite, which is odd. I mean, it might be third, but usually...
No, it's not. It's not odd. It could be the best album they made.
Yeah, exactly. Odd. Yeah, and it's really... That's, again, remind me of Tribe in a way like that, because it's very hard to rank those albums. And I think with these guys, until you see where they've gone, it's very easy to just be like, oh, this is a great 1994 album. It's a great album that, you know, anyone would be happy with bringing out what I would call this classic. It's just amazing that you said the next two we're going to talk about overshadow it on other levels. One thing that we do like to talk about on about this is the most rewindable tracks on the album, and also hidden gems, tracks that you feel like maybe need a bit more love. And you said there about Hootie Hoo.
Hootie Hoo. Yep. Deep is another one. Crumbling Erb. I mean, I think the album ends so strongly, right? Like the singles, I think, were Get Up, Get Out. I think that was a single. I think Players Ball was a single. So Players Ball was a single. Southern Playalistic was a single too. But like Crumbling Erb, Hootie Hoo, and Deep to me is the best 3-song run on that one project.
Wow.
You know, I mean, Crumbling Erb, I don't understand how you cannot listen to Crumbling Erb and just like...
Yeah.
Crumbling Erb is like a 4-tier song, right? You can clean the house to Crumbling Erb. You can smoke weed to Crumbling Erb. You can drive to Crumbling Erb, and you can downshift into Mac mode. Right? I only have a problem with Crumbling Erb when it comes to, you know, in the gym. Crumbling Herb is a little too down tempo for me in the gym. But you go from there to Hootie Hoo to Deep. I mean, it's you know, sonically, it's you know, it's just a really powerful, pounding, you know, guttural kind of feeling that I get at the end that still closes out what before that is really some pimp player rider joints on most of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're saying there about like how that sequence is great, but then you have that experimental side to them though, bro. As in, when I listen back to this, and I remember as a kid just skipping Funky Ride and just being like, I don't get this. This isn't hip hop to me. This isn't my hip hop. And being, I don't know, 15, 16 and just being so naive. And now probably the first track I play when I put this album on, and it's like, gotta play Funky Ride because it's...
Gotta play Funky Ride.
Gotta play it. And I love the fact that you put it as 4-tier songs. I think Funky Ride is kind of just like, okay, there's one thing I'm getting out of this, and that's just that either I'm going to bed with a woman or I'm going to just chill the fuck out. And, you know, and it's just fucking great. And what amazes me, and I think that does come down to Organised Noise and the Dungeon family generally, is just the balls to experiment like that on your debut and not what was the 94, what was the norm there? You've said Snoop, you said West, Nas has been out, Primo's been doing things with Gangstar. They could have easily just done one of those things, West or East, but I love that OutKast calling themselves OutKast, being the OutKast, and fully just turning that on its head, man. Like fully going, we will be the OutKast, but we're going to make it what is now become the norm for music, which is experimental. We will push, like, I don't know if there would be Tyler or if there would be, or Andre still doing it now, but pushing that envelope of where this hip hop sound can go. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder about that. You know, it's still a sample-based culture. You know, a lot of people are pulling from, you know, George Clinton. I think that overall, that era, you couldn't stand out unless you were different, right? I don't necessarily think that, you know, Wu-Tang sounded like, you know, native tongues, you know what I mean? True. Like, you know, and you could do the same thing with groups out West. I think that was more this, like, that isn't the part that necessarily stood out to me as much. I'm not downplaying because clearly, yes, they're experimental group. But what stood out to me more so was that where they came from while they were doing it, because it stood out to me in comparison to things that people compared to with other artists from the South. You know, and I think the South also needed a champion, you know, like a unified, undisputed heavyweight champ of the region. And I think that they were the first ones to really claim that. Later, we saw that with T.I. You know, you can say that with Future now if you wanted to. He's out of the Dungeon Family camp as well.
For sure.
But this was the first one that was like unified, undisputed. You know, and no takeaway from, no disrespect to Ghetto Boys or Scarface or anyone. But, you know, OutKast had the culture. And then Diddy was, I think Diddy was heavily involved in
the video.
Players Ball. He was around in the video. I think he produced that video. And so there was a cosign from other regions, you know, early in their visuals that were dope.
You know, you said that about the visuals. I do remember on Yo, and we've done Southern Playalistic on the podcast before as an episode, but I just have to say, I always remember that video, and I think it's Rico. I don't know who it is, but there's a silhouette of the guy at the beginning looking fucking cool, and then they're in just loads of shrubbery and forest, and I was like, what is this? Like, this is mad. And I'd seen Souls of Mischief, and they'd done stuff similar, but honestly, that for me was an eye-opening thing. I naturally envisage cities and concrete landscapes, and then seeing these guys with Atlanta jerseys on in a forest, I was like, wow, that's again just very different to what I'd seen.
And flexing their Southern accents, flexing their drawl. You know, I mean, they were proud of who they were and where they came from, and I think that's why they resonated so strongly out the gate.
Absolutely.
With everyone, but definitely with people from the South.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And again, the bars on here, Andre, Big Boi, both of them. I think, you know, when you see growth in, especially rappers and lyricism, I think in this run, I personally see that growth, it's exponential almost. By the time they get to Aquemini, for me, Andre is probably one of the best lyrical performances on any rap album ever, is Aquemini, and just listen to Andre on that, and it's just incredible. But if we're going to ATLiens, man, first of all, if I could ask you, where does the album ATLiens sit with you now, and where did it sit with you when you first heard it back then?
You know, I'm a huge Bone Thug fan, as we talked about last time. If I'm not mistaken, I think ATLiens, maybe I'm wrong about this, I could be wrong about this, but I think ATLiens came out at the same time or around the same time as one of the Mo Thug albums from Bone Thugs, if I'm not mistaken. And so I remember being infinitely more excited about the new Bone Thug release than I was about ATLiens at that point in time. I had just moved to South Carolina, to Greenville, South Carolina. Everybody in South Carolina was, you know, all OutKast everything. And I was excited about it, but I didn't have expectations for it at the same time. And so all that changed when I heard Elevators, because Elevators was the first time that I remember realizing that celebrities or musicians or people we looked up to or aspired to be were still living check to check.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is one of the most pivotal verses ever. And that becomes a staple in Andre's career. You know, all these verses where he just runs into random people and talk about random stuff. Got a call was in the mall the other day, heard a call from the other way that just came from some guys were saying something, talking about, what's up, man? Remember me from school? No, not really, but it kept smiling like a clown facial expression, looking silly. And at the end of it, he's like, and the verse closes with, he said, true, I got more fans than the average man, but not enough loot to last me. To the end of the week, I live by the beat like you live check to check. If you don't move your feet, then I don't eat, then we like neck to neck. Like, to me, that was a mind-blowing expression. You know, I'm not saying for anyone else in the world, but where I was in life, I was working at the mall, man. I wasn't even at the mall yet. I was working at McDonald's. I made $119 every 2 weeks.
Damn.
I went to a CD, a video game, and a polo shirt.
That's pretty good.
And so, and I'm listening to these cats who are stars.
Yeah.
You know, who were controlling the culture where I am. And to me, that verse is so humbling, but also grounding. Grounds themselves in the everyday struggle that we all experience. That, to me, is what I remember most about when that project first hit, when Elevators first dropped.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think I prefer the production more on ATLiens than I do on Southern Playalistic. And so that was a huge impact for me as well. I mean, there's still, Organized Noise still coming out of LA or LaFace Records.
For sure.
But where that album starts, if I'm not mistaken, the first song on there is Two Dope Boys in a Cadillac, right?
Two Dope Boys, yeah.
And so that one felt like it was a pickup from where the last project left off, but instead now they're like aliens, they're in outer space, and it sounds all, Star Trekked out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then by the time you get to songs like Jazzy Belle, Babylon, Babylon was another one of those moments for me.
Yeah.
Where I just saw the world different when he says, they made them gas. They got some shit that'll blow out our back from where they stay at. There's another verse on there where I think Andre says, they call it horny because it's devilish. Right?
Yeah.
These like, if you just take those three examples of those bars that I'm talking about, that's one of the reasons why this album to me has grown with me over the years, more so than Southern Playalistic, because these are perspectives now that still make me wonder.
Yeah.
Is that really why they call it horny? Because it's devilish?
Yeah.
If I went to grab Webster dictionary.
Would it be that? Yeah.
Encyclopedia Britannica, look at the history.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, but it gets
like to this day. Right.
Yeah. There's so many bars on that album, man. There's the part where I always remember that feeling. Well, he says, I'm trying to catch the same feeling off of music than looking at ceiling fans. And as a kid being like, well, the first thing I thought of was Apocalypse Now and the start of Apocalypse Now with the ceiling fans. And then Andre saying that, I was like, but this guy's in Vietnam and Andre's over there. And what is that feeling he's looking for? And it being just one of those unexplained, ethereal things that OutKast say and sort of stuck with me through the years. And I mean, if I'm asking you about this album compared to their last album, what are the themes that they're continuing with and where is that growth kind of emanating from, would you say, for those guys, from Southern Playalistic to ATLiens?
I look at their overall growth in conjunction with the Dungeon Family culture. Right? I mean, this album, Witch Doctor's on this album, Cujo's on this album. I think Timo and Cujo are on mainstream. Slow to face down in the mainstream.
They are. Yes.
Big Gip's on here. I think Cool Breeze is introduced on this album, if I'm not mistaken. I know they're on Decatur Palms.
Decatur Palms, yeah. I'm not sure if that's the first or not, but yeah, definitely. So yes, you're right. There is that posse element to them.
So that the whole thing with the Dungeon Family culture is everyone had to be original. They were around each other a lot. And so they pushed each other. They describe it as a basement filled with marijuana, right?
Yeah.
Weed leads to deeper and more progressive thoughts. And I also feel like, if you look at their inspirations, if you look at all the things that they took from the Native Tongues, Native Tongues did a great job of not putting out the same album more than once.
Yeah, absolutely.
De La Soul never went back to the well.
It's true.
Tribe wasn't going back to the well, and so I feel like that, broadly speaking, was at the core of who OutKast was, but also Dungeon Family. Goody Mob didn't go back to the well.
Absolutely, yeah.
These guys weren't making the same album over and over again, and so I think that naturally, that plus growth naturally lead you into deeper thoughts, bigger questions. The 90s itself was a very dark time. I mean, there was a pervasive feeling of fatalism that was bleeding through so much of the rap music.
Mob T.
Everybody was worried about, will I be alive when I'm 25? You had people talking about Behold a Pale Horse and conspiracy theories. Hip hop is incredibly conspiratorial. And so I hear that when I hear like the ATLiens out of this world, perspective, like, even touching on, or making the metaphor that you know what, we're out of here. We're in this whole nother zone out here with these aliens that we know got to be out here, even though, you know, we haven't been to Area 51. And so I think you take the Dungeon Family ethos, you take, you know, a fatalistic and conspiratorial medium like 1990s hip hop, and then you apply it to a tangible life that people are living. And then you come up with things like, you know, ATLiens, you know, like I think that naturally pushes you to be more not like you used to be, to embrace the growth and change that's happening around you, but that's also happening within you.
Yeah. Oh man, perfectly said, by the way, Justin. It's just outer space and inner space. It feels like both. And I know that Andre had kind of got into that new religion with science and aliens and stuff like that. That's my natural thinking of where that sci-fi element came in, because you can't really spot it in that first one as much, despite the musical elements maybe being a bit more spacey on some parts. But I think on this, it is weird when you look and think, wow, you just went and made things that signpost Aquemini, like 13th Floor and E.T. and man, just the way you can make, and we talk about rewindable tracks, one of our most rewindable moments in OutKast history is Andre's humming on Millennium. Just that. Mate, how's that not going to make you feel good, man? How's that not going to make you feel good? And
right,
I love that. And I think there's moments in this, because the album is so, I think it's quite a cohesive album. I feel like it is a very, very accomplished second piece of work that is just kind of very cohesive. You've made a concept and stuck to it and experimented while sticking to the DNA, and it's really hard to do that. You see people try, and it doesn't always work. So I do have to say that props for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a song like Mainstream, right? I mean, you end up floating face down in the mainstream. At the time when it came out, it didn't necessarily immediately catch what they were talking about. But can you imagine the fear of falling off this whole collective must have felt around this time?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they had already made Waterfalls.
Yeah, God, yeah, they had.
They made Waterfalls, you know, like they're coming off some massive hits.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, they find a way to even, I'm not going to say they surpassed Waterfalls, don't get me wrong. They didn't do it on this album. Yeah. But I feel that when I hear songs like Mainstream, you know, I feel like, you know, the mood of the dungeon or the culture of that crew felt like it had to be very different from anything that they'd already done in order to find a way to be successful.
Yeah.
Because Swagger Jacket wasn't cool back then. You know, it wasn't cool to sit there and sound like everybody else, broadly speaking, in hip hop at all. And definitely not within their crew. And like, that's one of the moments that feels, I don't want to say fearful, but, you know, one of the moments of like, where I feel like there was a reflexive concern. Like, yo, guys, whatever we do, if we're going to fall off, we're going to fall off being something totally different. You know, we're not going to fall off, you know, being Southern players still.
We're
going to fall off, we're going to be two dope boys in a spaceship.
You know with some wheels of steel. Do you know what I mean? It's just with some wheels of steel. It is one of them. You're right. And I think the artwork, everything, I think that artwork has definitely improved from their first album. That artwork is a little bit simple, but after this, they're thinking, right, we've got to make the whole package look like we feel and we portray, but in images. And I know that they said that Big Boi's like drawing didn't look like Big Boi, so they put an Atlantic cap on him to make it look more like Big Boi, which I thought I did not notice as a kid at all. But when you look back, you realise, that was a good idea. You should have done that.
But, you know, and I think the thing that's really the strength of, at least let's look at OutKast as a duo, is that, let's say hypothetically they split up after their first album, right? I think Big Boi would be much more successful than Andre, right? Because
Wow.
Andre at this point is already, like you talked about, he's thinking about, weird science stuff, and he's, getting more comfortable going on his own path, at least visually, at least from a far away fan teenage perspective at that point in time.
Yeah.
And and Big Boi is the one that, to me, has always kept OutKast accessible. Right. And so I'm not sure if people would go sign up or go pay tickets or go buy a CD of, a random dude with, weird head wraps and wild ideas.
Yeah, very American football like tops and stuff. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like here we can see the seeds of a divergence of, artistic priorities or where each of them are in their lives. For the first time, like the seeds are planted here. Right. By the time you get to Stankonia, which to me is the best example of them remaining futuristic and crazy and wildly separate in style and arguably point of view, but still crafting massive songs together. To me, that Stankonia is like the best example of that. Because the next album is literally two different discs.
Yeah, by that point, yeah.
Literally two completely different things.
Yeah.
One of them's over here singing.
Yeah.
The other one.
With pop.
You know what I'm saying?
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you get to, Idlewild. And Idlewild essentially is still two separate. It's one album with each of them having their own songs. I think maybe there's 2 or 3 songs that they're on there together on Idlewild. Don't quote me on that. But most of it is like Big Boi doing his thing and then Andre doing his thing, just condensed in for a soundtrack of a movie. So this is like the seeds of them, where you can see artistically them taking different paths to experimentation, let's say. But I think that Big Boi is the one that grounds this project and grounded OutKast to the point where they could even be OutKast, or they could be accepted, broadly speaking. Because after that, I think you just have two, I think Andre would have been a little bit more niche at that point in time. Like the Weird Kids might have rocked with him. But I don't know about the Pimp Play Hustlers. They were already getting criticized for wearing, dresses and stuff.
Turbans and stuff, yeah. Yeah. Man, that's a really interesting point. I didn't think of it that way. I was going to ask you about if you had your personal favourite you just liked listening to out of the two, but I think what your point is more pertinent. But if you did have one of them that you prefer to listen to, or are they both just bring you different things?
Between ATLiens and Southernplayalistic?
Sorry,
between the two artists?
Yeah, between the two artists, sorry, yeah.
I think Andre, like I'm a lyric first guy. We talked about that with Bone Thugs. That's the irony of me being a Bone Thugs fan. Like East 99 to me is still my favorite album. It's literally about murder and marijuana. But like I love it. There's no metaphors. They're not dropping similes.
It's just murder and marijuana.
It's a very linear experience.
Yeah.
But the reason why that album Bone Thugs stands out to me so much is because of stylistically how they're bobbing and weaving. And to me, Andre does that a little bit better, the combination of the two. I think both of them are lyrical monsters. But I feel like Andre is more experimental when it comes to pockets and flows, and pushing where that could go while still having, truth bombs that are just bursting your mind grapes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but that's obviously not to take anything away from Big Boi.
For sure.
I think, because I think even without Andre, Big Boi is still a top 10, top 15 arguable MC ever. You know what I mean? If someone came up to me and told me Big Boi was the greatest rapper of all time, I might not agree, but I'd understand.
Yeah.
He is that good. But, Andre is the one that's always seems to be saying something that makes me think something different in a way that is just exactly how I need to hear it.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I'd have to give the edge to Andre on that.
Yeah. Fair, man. Fair. Is there any tracks on ATLiens? I know it's a very lauded album, but is there any places with hidden gems where you feel like maybe deserve a bit more love on that album?
Babylon,
Big.
Waylon,
Wailing.
Mainstream, Millennial,
Yeah.
E.T.
E.T.
This album, I think people get caught up with the hits on this album. They get caught up with, Elevators.
Mm-mm.
I think even Two Dope Boys in the Cadillac isn't a hit, but it feels very approachable.
Yeah.
Jazzy Bell to me is underrated, but I think they did put that out. I feel like they put that out as a single at some point, so they believed in it. Was it ATLiens and Elevators, right?
Mm-mm.
It's a front-loaded project in terms of, and honestly, I don't know. I've always wanted to ask them this. I should call them up and ask them this and see what they say. But with an album that's this experimental, I kind of feel like they put all the most accessible joints at the front, right?
Yeah.
Like they wanted, and this is a CD format, right? This isn't streaming. Let's skip around, put it on shuffle real easy. This is tapes and CDs and records, right? So by the time I get to like Babylon, Waylon, Mainstream, I can't remember if
it was Babylon, Waylon, Mainstream, Decatur, Millennium, E.T., 13th Floor. You're right. Yeah.
Right. Those are really experimental joints in comparison to the things that are at the front. And I know for me personally, it took me a while to like really appreciate the second half of that album. I grew into the second half of that album. The first half of that album was like, exactly where I was in life. But I wasn't, I mentioned it earlier, I wasn't at Mainstream at that point in my life. I wasn't at Babylon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wasn't at some of these ideas and concepts like that show up later. So I look at anything after Babylon as being the hidden gem. And I honestly feel that it's structured that way, but I could be wrong.
I can see that. They're very, very concise and intelligent people. I think that, and especially being on The Face, it's a genuine massive record label. It's a place where people think these things through, right? Like, how are we going to sequence this? And I feel like it is. I totally agree with you. Even Wailing has some great humming on it, actually, thinking about it. There is some great harmonizing melodic stuff that, to be fair, when I am actually with you there though, Justin, I think as a kid, this was probably the least spun because it was hardest to kind of dig into. But again, 10 years later, I'll put on Mainstream or Wailing or whatever, and you'd be like, wow, I forgot how good this is. So I am with you there.
But for me, it wasn't forgot.
Yeah.
For me was just didn't get it yet.
Just didn't get it. Yeah.
Like there's like sometimes that happens to me. Like Southernplayalistic, I didn't feel like I didn't get. I feel I liked it for everything it is. I feel like I liked it for everything it was. 100%. I feel like I was right on time. I think that's one of the reasons why it's my second least favorite OutKast album because. I think sonically there's a lot of things I appreciate more now than maybe I did then. But in terms of the things that they're talking about, I understood them. I could understand. I've seen other things in media and in culture that, connected to some of the things that felt like they were talking about. ATLiens, in comparison to Southernplayalistic for me, there was a lot of stuff that I had not thought about.
Yeah.
And that's just a 2-year gap. So, to be a fly on the wall in the dungeon during that period of time.
Yeah. And the messages, the substance to the kind of style is all over it as well. Like you've said there, the stuff they're talking about, it is about the struggle. It is about not just God, but ethereal things that are in the air. Like, what if there is this other dimension? And what if there, like, again, I'm with you, man. I wasn't there. That wasn't there. I feel like at that age, I needed up-tempo or gritty, something that's gonna get me, like, my energy levels are high. So when something like what you've said there, Mainstream, stuff like that comes on, it's not, and my mates and my boys and me aren't gonna play that and go, yeah, wild out. You can listen to that like prog rock. You get your headphones on and you really get into it. So I feel you, man. When we then go on, man, and we're now talking 98, so hip-hop has completely changed since Southern Playalistic. When Aquemini comes out, what are your feelings on how they had changed from ATLiens going into what became their masterpiece, Aquemini?
You know, this is post Biggie and Pac passing away.
Yeah.
And hip hop was in a love movement. You know, everyone was, I think, understanding the cost of that fatalism. And so you get a whole bunch of people working together in different ways. You know, you get a lot of cross collaborations with people from other regions. Raekwon, I think, is on this album. I think it's the first time that they really did. I don't think now that I think about it, I don't think OutKast had a feature from anyone outside of their camp until this album.
I think Raekwon is definitely the first East Coast feature, definitely, because I'd not heard Southern and East at that time myself personally, but I do remember that one thing sticking out.
That was a big deal.
Yeah,
Skewed on the Barbie was a big deal when that happened.
I can imagine it's incredible.
Right. Now we are now 4 years removed from The South Got Something to Say. That's all I got to say. This is one of the most anticipated albums this year. I think it's probably their highest reviewed album. Maybe, like, arguably. I know it got Album of the Year, and
it got 5. It got 5 mics.
Yeah, it got 5 mics.
Which they had to fight for, though, apparently. Apparently they had a proper fight for that. Like, they weren't going to give it. And the stories I've heard, anyway, are they had to really go for it. But it's a 5 mic album.
That's their whole thing. I mean, they came in fighting, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
This one was weird to me when I first heard it.
Okay.
I was like, it was so weird, man. It was like,
but Rosa Parks not get you going? Did the singles not get you going? Like where they dropped?
Look, I like this better than the other two OutKast songs we talked about. You know what I'm saying? But this is who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Every album can either be 5 of their 6 albums can either be the best album they ever put out or the second worst.
That's incredible.
Like, that's different.
Yeah.
You know, and that's again a testament to how different this album was. Right? I mean, now let's retrace how we got here. Southern Playalistic was different for hip hop. It was different for the South. It was different for the broader culture. People weren't expecting this from anybody from that region. ATLiens was wild different from that. And that one was just about aliens. I'm now, this is 2 years after that.
Yeah.
So I'm in high school now. I don't really have a concept of like Black righteous space. So now I'm over here thinking again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is another one of those albums that fully took me a couple of years to really, really exalt. Right. And, outside of the first album and Speaker Box Love Below, every OutKast album, everything in between Southern Playalistic and Speaker Box Love Below was an adjustment period for me.
Yeah.
And this is the one where I felt like they're both really being who they are individually with less care of, what anyone else thought and push their music in that same direction as well. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think this is the best raps.
100%.
To this day, I still think it's the best raps that they've ever put out.
100%. I'm with you there. Definitely.
I still think it's the best collection of stuff. But, like you take like Return of the G.
Oh, man.
Return. Like that.
Their sense, the beauty of Return of the G for me is that it's their sense of knowingness. About you can't imagine battling them at this point because they know all the things you're going to say about them. We know what you think of us, but guess what? We're just going to do it anyway. And the way they attack it in the rap, like this is gangster. This is just as gangster. Doing what we're doing.
He said, people want to talk about gospel rapping, but they be steady clapping when you're talking about bitches and switches and hoes and clothes and weed. Let's talk about time traveling, rhyme javeling, something mind unraveling.
Man.
And I remember I had an 88 Honda Civic I had just bought working 2 jobs in the summer at at Gap Kids and Chick-fil-A.
Mm.
I remember riding around in my 88 Honda Civic like, rhyme javelin. Rhyme javelin. Man, who else is rhyme javelin around here? I don't know if I see enough rhyme javelin.
And weirdly enough, your mind
like it should be in the Olympics, you know.
Funnily enough, your mind was unraveling at that point. He was right.
It was. Right. It really did. You know, you know, the idea that they called the song Rosa Parks, you know, and the song wasn't about Rosa Parks. Really.
No, nothing to do with conscious rap, or it's just a banger with possibly actually, let's just, another reason this might be one of the best runs, and you can put it in there, is one on Funky Ride, they've got one of the best electric guitar solos I've ever heard on a rap record, and then on this they've got one of the best hoedown sequences I've ever heard on any record. Like, you're just going to do this, are you? You're just going to do a harmonica now? Brilliant. I'd never seen anything like that. Never. Yeah. I mean, you know, what comes on after that? I think Skew It on the Barbie's after that, right? So oh man, sequencing. And that Raekwon verse is just magical on that. On one of his best.
Yeah, I mean he was just like relentless on that.
Yeah.
And flipping the page, I go watch 5-0. That whole thing is hard.
It's sick.
You know, and so, but you know, there's also a tangibleness that I think that this album does really well, considering how high-minded a lot of the concepts are. You know, like you look at what Rosa Parks is like, hush that fuzz. Yeah. Everybody move to the back of the bus. Do you want to romp and stomp with her? Like, it's very chanty. It's very easy to pick up. And then they go into these verses that are just like, you know, high-minded. Like the Rosa Parks verse, I think Andre's verse on there is like, it reminds me of Elevators, because I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, I think on that verse he's talking about, and it's another one of those conversation verses, I think. Yeah. That might be off of that. Let's see. Yeah. You know, he goes, I met a gypsy and she hit me to some light game. Yeah. To stimulate and activate your left and right brain. Yeah. The baby boy, you only funky as your last cut. You focus on the past, your ass will be a has-one.
Yeah. What is that?
Right. Well, that sounds like what they're worried about on ATLiens. Face down the mainstream. Yeah. Right. They're really embracing. We got to keep doing this thing different. If we don't reinvent ourselves every time we get a chance, we will always be late and lose faster. You know, and I don't know if it's necessarily unique again, but I think it's synonymous again with their culture and with the era that it was. This to me is at one of the points where that hey, we got to be different mantra in hip hop is starting to, you know, not be as critical. Right now, I don't think there's a big emphasis on being different. But it was there. Yeah. You know, it's him and Aquemini. Yeah. You know, I didn't know what Aquemini was until that song came on. And you when you talk about Aquemini, the title track, I would say that is probably Andre's best verses ever. One of my favorite verses, like, generally. It's just unreal. And I know people in recent years have really analysed that verse, but I am glad that when you look back, you realise you talking about bars, and I was very lyrics led as well. And I think the first thing that really hit me on this was I had Southern Playalistic, I had ATLiens, and I thoroughly loved those albums. Not once in my conversations did I say Andre is top 5. Not once did I back Andre up in an argument if we're talking about rhyming. It was always East or West Coast. When I heard Skew It on the Barbie, and it was that, and then it was Aquemini, and then just generally all over this album, I remember at that point going, oh no, he's just held his own with Raekwon.
like, and Big Boi, both of them have just been on there with one of the best from the Woo, and maybe even outclassed him, if not at least kept up with him. So that for me was a big wake up call. So I appreciate what you said there about the bars as well.
I'm quite happy saying, look, I don't care how unpopular this is. Raekwon lost on Skewed on the Barbie to me, and that's an incredible verse.
Yeah, but it's a classic track, right? Like, yeah, I don't know if he lost.
I love what Raekwon doing, but
yeah, but the argument there is there.
Pick two. I don't know if I'm picking Ray as part of that too. You know, and that's no disrespect because he came hard. I mean, that's how you know. That's how feeling their flow they were at that point in time.
Yeah, and if
but like that Aquemini verse, like Andre said some really important stuff on that one.
Yeah,
and like because I think the beat switches on that one too, right? So
yeah, in the second half, yeah.
So Big Boi goes, Aquemini is Aquarius and the Gemini running shit, and then oh no, I think that's. My walks the bench, supposed to win, count to 10, meet the twin, Andre Ben, welcome to the Lions Den.
Yeah.
Original skin, many men comprehend, I expand myself. That's right. And so the beat switches, and then he goes, how does he say that? It's one of my favorite things he's ever said, I've ever heard, ever in the history of sound.
Yeah.
Oh, man, he says, let's walk to the bridge, meet me halfway. Now, you might see some children dead up in that pathway. Just some poor babies walking slowly to the candy lady. It's looking bad. Need some hope, like the words maybe, if, or probably. More than a hobby where my turntables get wobbly, they don't fall. What? Need some hope, like the words maybe, if, or probably? Like that.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like, I'm a huge Lupe fan. Everybody knows this, right? And one of the things I love about Lupe is how he can make, you know, like the simple complexity as he describes it. In retrospect, that's the first time I really appreciated. That's exactly the same thing I loved about that. I would not say at that point in time I was describing this in this way. I wasn't this, you know, in tune with why I love that part so much. But I know that I never heard or thought about a train of thought being, you know, exemplified that way. Need some hope, like the words maybe, if, or probably.
Yeah.
And that's not really, it's a simile, but it's not really the punchline.
No.
It's like, it's still kind of like a transition that is like, weighty.
Yeah. I find just that all the time. Synthesizer has that as well. Like, there are moments where you're like, and obviously the art of storytelling, both of those. This album, man, just listing those tracks willy-nilly, it makes you realise just how good this album actually, it's just unreal, because he is dropping these really weighty things and it takes ages to catch them, because unlike other people, they would make that the crutch of the verse or the song, and he just puts it in, like you said, and stitches it together, and you're like, wow, this is unreal. Can I just ask you for your thoughts on Mamacita?
This album's undefeated. You know, I love Mamacita, Papa Dana. That's beautiful, like achy breaky. Man, I mean, it's just like
do you know I cannot take that song seriously in this album. I can't. It just doesn't doesn't sit.
What y'all call bras, realize the heat, we yelling for some yarn bars. I mean,
that is good.
It's like, it's not, I feel like Dave Chappelle's in this really cool place right now. Chris Rock is my favorite stand-up comedian of all time. Right. Period. You know what I'm saying? Chris Rock, 100%. I feel like Chris Rock does the best of saying stuff, and I laugh really hard, and at the end, I'm like, that's true. Right. And I love things that tend to lean towards political humor and cultural commentary. And so for a long time, I love Dave Chappelle too, don't get me wrong. But for a long time, when people would say Dave Chappelle's better than Chris Rock or anybody else, you know, I would kind of hedge a little bit, you know. But Dave Chappelle now, to me, is by far the best comedian out, and it's starting to feel like the best comedian ever. And it's because he's in this really cool space that I haven't seen before, where he's not really telling jokes, not really giving motivational speeches, and not really giving some sort of personal, testimony of plight or anything. It's this weird space in between where all of it is expected at any given time. And if none of it shows up, that's okay too, and maybe probably better.
Yeah.
Right. There isn't a formula that I've seen that I can use to really describe what Dave Chappelle is doing from a stand-up space now, or I can't immediately find its direct influences in terms of the style that he's using. Right. I have to go back to a style he used to use, to another style he used, to the styles that was inspired by.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And Mamacita is one of those moments for me when I think about OutKast.
Okay.
Right. Like, it's just, they're so themselves only that to me now it's difficult to immediately trace it back to native tongues, we'll say.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't immediately feel like something that I know it's a derivative of.
It's come from, yeah.
Right. And that is when you start to explode. Like, just the ingenuity of a song like Mamacita. Right. And then after that, you go to Spodioli Dopalicious.
Unreal.
With one of the best horns ever.
Yeah.
This to me is, I mean, I'm not saying this is the first time, but for me, this is the first time I even think about trap. I think Big Boi is like,
yeah, trap.
Now you just stuck like that in the trap.
Trap, yeah.
Just like that, trapped.
Trapped, yeah.
Trap doesn't go national until a couple of years later.
Yeah.
Until T.I. shows up.
Yeah.
They at the tail end of the sound between that one and I think Y'all Scared.
Yeah.
They basically dead trap music before it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I've thought that as well when I hear that trap line. It seems so normal now to hear trap and trap music, but
yeah.
I no, he was saying that back then, 98. It's crazy. I love that.
Yeah.
Spodioli.
It wasn't a global thing. I mean, trap music has been, the term trap has been bastardized so much now.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there was a whole era in the early teens where trap was just some EDM stuff. All of a sudden, trap was EDM.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't Jeezy and Gucci and Tip no more. It was
something different.
Rave music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Trap is leaned out now.
Yeah.
There's like 3 iterations of this thing OutKast killed before it showed up.
That's crazy. That's crazy. That is crazy, man. And I definitely love that horn section. You're right. That I need that played at my funeral, and I love that. It's amazing.
Right.
It's so good.
March in with me, man. It's a celebration.
Yeah, we're celebrating right now. We're celebrating.
Right.
Just on a personal tip, hidden gems, rewindables.
Hold tight, real quick. I gotta give a hidden gem right now.
Go.
Y'all Scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
My man started a verse with paragraph and dent. I'm making 10 cents. Paragraph and dent.
Yeah. It's bad.
Because back in the day, when you were starting a paragraph, you used to have to indent.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
He started paragraph and dent. I'm making 10 cents. The niggas on that Gil Scott smoking Billy Clinton. Have you ever thought the meaning of the word trap? I mean,
yeah. Have you ever? Yeah.
And then there's right there with them the whole time throughout this whole, conversation with these 3 albums is Goody Mob.
Yeah.
And Organized Noise. And so I was talking to them recently, and because their new album is great. If you ever heard
love it. Yeah.
It's a great album. The whole crew, the whole collective. You asked me where I think their motivations were, OutKast, or where things come from. This is just all of them. And Gip was pointing out how much of a collective success they all viewed everything each other did. Right. They were all parts of these albums. It wasn't just Andre and Big Boi sitting alone. Arguably, by the time it kind of gets there, I guess, it's Speaker Box Love Below, because that's the one where, Organized Noise wasn't as much a part of. I know that was something that bothered them when they got Album of the Year and they didn't thank Organized Noise. I know that bothered them at a point in time.
Yeah.
But all of these, you know, heroes to me, you know, Big Gift, Timo, Cujo, Andre, Rico Wade, Sleepy Brown, CeeLo, you know, like CeeLo, all these heroes to me are heroes because they stood on their own individuality. They never bent to anyone else's expectations of them. They didn't take the bait when other people are trying to point them out for being wrong or weird or gay or odd. They never went back to the well to do the exact same thing as they did before, because they realized the thing that people loved about them was what they were doing and how they were doing it. Yeah. This to me is the best 3-album run and for this 3-album run conversation. Because to me, I think a better 3-album run is either ATLiens and Aquemini, Stankonia. For sure.
But we're doing 90s.
Or Aquemini, Stankonia, Speak About It. But what I'm saying is, either way, it's like, to me, that is a product of people believing in each other despite who people or each of them decided who they chose to be. You know what I mean?
100%.
Like they let, I mean, look at, you could do this with, you could arguably do it with CeeLo alone, really.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
I mean, he's the first one to come out with a singing album in the whole crew.
Yeah. He's
you know,
look at his latest work. It's just so different, but it's, as you've said, exceptionally CeeLo. They're almost a genre onto themselves, almost, you know, like they just do this stuff where, and again, we talked about Aquemini on the pod before, so excuse me if I'm repeating myself, but the only other act I could even slightly liken them to in music was David Bowie. Because I was like, David Bowie came out in a rock time doing rock music in his own way, and then as he's kept making music, he realised what you've just said. Oh, they don't care about the rock music, they care about me doing me. And I feel that's exactly what Goody Mob went on and still are doing in 2020. When you hear that new album, it's nothing like you've heard before. I would say that new album, it's not Cell Therapy, it's not, you know, any of the stuff they've done before. It is very...
it's not Soul Food, it's not World Party,
it's not World Party, exactly. So yeah,
you know, it's I mean, that is a whole collective, you know, experience. And you know, I think Cujo is the most underrated one in the whole crew.
Yeah.
Listen to me now or believe me later on.
Yeah.
You know how deep that is?
Yeah. Yeah. he was menacing. Deeper.
Come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, deep.
You know, and so I look at this as a 3-album run. OutKast, to me, is the greatest group of all time. To me, Andre 3000 is the greatest MC of all time.
Yeah. But
I don't look at OutKast any differently or coming from a different place than I look at anyone else in the Dungeon family. And particularly this point in time, to me, this is a massive collective Dungeon family success. You know, from my perspective. I'm not saying someone else told me that.
No, but no, yeah.
But, and I feel that way. Because over time, as I get older, the thing that is truly amazing about these 3 projects is that all 3 of them, the points they're making and where they're coming from, I still haven't gotten to the point in my life where I've experienced the jewels that they've implanted on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean,
you think in 20 years' time you'll still be listening and still be getting those bits?
Like, I'll be 80 years old in a nursing home with implanted chips playing 2K on PlayStation 40.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, dang, did you hear Liberation with CeeLo? And Erica, I'm just now catching what Chunkify means. I did not know what Chunkify meant when COVID was happening, but I get it now that the Martians are here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for bringing Liberation to the table, because that was going to be that's my track of 2020 that's kept me going through. You know, the Spotify raps pop up, like Liberation was right up there. I was like, yeah, it's just been that track that 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, I will still be playing that, you know? So I appreciate that argument. I appreciate that love that you've brought. So many insightful ways to look at this run, because it's very different to the way I look at it. So I really appreciate that, Justin. When you look at Aquemini coming along, obviously 5 mics, it critically lauded. People think it is, you know, still one of the best pieces of work in the 90s. Where do OutKast go from the 90s to what happened for them after this? In your eyes, did they just get better and better, or do you think it was just peaked here?
I think Stankonia is, I mean, honestly, I enjoy Aquemini more than Stankonia. I enjoy it more. And I think there's probably some nostalgia that's heavily attached to that point in time.
For sure.
Stankonia might be a better album. Again, 5 out of 6 albums can either be the best they've ever made or the second worst.
Yeah.
Here's what we do know. We do know Stankonia was more successful.
Yeah.
We know it sold more records.
Yeah, it did.
You know, I'm Sorry Miss Jackson was a bigger hit than anything they had on any of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we know So Fresh and So Clean was at so many step shows.
Yeah.
I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. Never saw a Nuke not break out So Fresh and So Clean.
Damn.
You know, it's definitely, and it's weirder.
Yeah. You could play Gasoline.
More ornery. It's more electric. You know, like they're pushing away from a lot of the folk stuff that they've been associated with up until this point in time.
You could play Gasoline Dreams now, and that is 2020's. That's 2020 right now. That's what's happening in the world. It feels like the world is burning. You listen to Gasoline Dreams, it is that. There are moments in that album that far supersede what I think they are right now. I feel like that energy will keep hitting me over and over again. I was listening to the interlude on there. I can't remember what it's called, but it's just, there's a woman who's just trying to ease her anxiety by smoking blow. And at that point, I was like, damn, I can imagine a lot of anxious people in the world right now in 2020. And this album has that energy, which is making me feel that. I feel like, Stankonia, you're right. There is moments in it that I still haven't got to.
Look, they made a song called Bombs Over Baghdad, and then there was Bombs Over Baghdad.
Unreal. Yeah.
You know, so like I said, I'm not sure this is the best 3-album run of this one group.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure. But you know, I know that as amazing as Southern Playalistic is to me, it's the second worst album.
Damn, man. Damn, that's mad, man. That's crazy.
So, you know, I mean, look, and then you get to Speaker Barks Love Below, which is also on my wall. It's right there.
There we go.
Because I know I positioned this way since we talk about OutKast, so just keep the OutKast.
Boom, love it. Love
you
that.
know what I'm saying? There's some thought process. You know what I'm saying? It's right there next to the tribe, native tongues, too. You know what I'm saying? We ain't out here not thinking. But, you know, that album is, to me, that is, in my opinion, the final act of OutKast. We'll say. I don't want to say final act. Let's say this. That to me is the OutKast endgame. Right? We're going to compare this to the Marvel Universe. Yeah. And then Southern Playalistic's like Iron Man. Yeah. And then like, you know, Aquemini's like, you know, Winter Soldier or something, or Civil War. You know, to me, that's endgame. To me, that's endgame. Because that's where I think, more than anything else, that is the ultimate balance between the best of both of them still being together at the same time and having maximum success, right? I mean, you can look at it as Civil War if you want to, but I don't look at anything that happened after that as being negative. I think that they had been growing away from each other artistically since they showed up. Or since ATLiens. Right? So, yeah, I guess one of them wants to go make some sneakers, sell some suspenders. Then the other one wants to go make sure Killer Mike's one of the biggest people on the planet. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that they're the most interesting in that regard. Because let's say you look at, like, people always talk about, well, why don't we get another OutKast album? Or where's Andre? Or why is he so difficult to, get on record or wax or whatever? Let's say, we know that Native Tongues was a huge influence. To me, it's not crazy. I don't know this for a fact. I've posed a couple of theories to Goody Mob that I had about things that were happening with organized noise and at the source of words that year and in that era. I posed a couple of theories to them. They told me I was wrong. They was like, you're wrong because this and this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Now I don't have that theory anymore. I posed one theory that they said I was right. They said, that's actually good. That's actually right. So, I'm maybe 1 for 3.
Yeah,
I'm 1 for 3. I'm not in this to be right.
Yeah.
I'm in this to learn.
To learn.
Like,
absolutely.
how do you get good at your job if you don't ask questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, but look at what happened in Native Tongues.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I don't know if we felt, I don't know how we felt about, A Tribe Called Quest music after Midnight Marauders. I don't know how we felt about it.
Yeah.
Look at that duration after, I think Love Movement was the last one.
Love Movement, then it went into 2016 or 2017. 2016's one.
Right. Yeah. So after Love Movement, Q-Tip didn't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
And Fife was trying to do it for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's that sound like? If Andre is inspired by Q-Tip and Native Tongues, it looks very similar.
Justin, you're bringing
Even
that fire, man.
They're not.
Yeah.
It looks like it to me.
I didn't think that. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I did not think of it that way, but there is that resemblance to it. Yeah. If you are here,
if they don't make a movie, if they don't make a movie, they don't make Ottawa.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree with that. I think that is made specifically for that. Yeah, definitely.
And what's a better way to go out than 10 million sold and the only rap album ever to win best album at the Grammys?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Crazy.
There you go.
Crazy. Just
I don't know.
I'm loving that fire, man. If I can pick your brains then for a second, because I don't think it's solely OutKast who put Southern rap above other forms of rap to make it the most like commercially successful. I think they definitely helped in that fact. Obviously, you talked about that from their first album to their third. In your opinion, what since Stankonia going into today and Southern rap being so massive, what were the deciding changing factors for you where New York rap and LA rap maybe fell down to the sides a little bit and Southern rap became more to that forefront? And where did OutKast play their part in that?
I think beef is the biggest thing. I think what's really interesting right now is this might be the biggest year New York hip hop has had in a very long time. Busta Rhymes album is crazy.
Yeah.
Conway, Benny the Butcher, Nas, Pop Smoke. You could play, like, when you see year-end lists that are coming out over the next couple of months, pay attention to how many of those are either from that city or from that state or that region.
Yeah.
Right. The 90s, everybody ready to die, and they did. There was a whole lot of beef. LA doesn't come back until, I believe, Snoop Dogg does the Protect the West conference. He gets all those guys together in the mid-aughts.
That was,
and he starts talking about how this is after he comes back from rocking with Master P. Yeah, he gets off his No Limit thing, comes back, does this Protect the West conference, and everybody starts talking about how we got to work together. That sparks a younger generation because little J-Rock is there and little Kendrick is there.
Yeah.
And all those guys are there. So LA starts working together more. And then everyone moves out. So LA's had its resurgence in the past couple of years of unity. New York always takes the longest. It'll be the most difficult because you got 50 Cent running around trolling everybody. There's still people, and New York is just a different energy. I don't want to put it on blame with 50, but he's a big part. So the South didn't really have that collectively. Now that's a big difference because when you say the West Coast, you really mean LA to the Bay?
Probably, yeah.
Generally speaking. I don't know a lot of people thinking about Nacho Picasso being a West Coast artist. I'm not sure if people think of Macklemore as a West Coast artist.
Yeah.
But there's 2 other states on the West Coast that aren't necessarily included in what's happening in California.
For sure.
And that's really 2 places, maybe 3, LA, Fresno, Bay Area, and we'll tack Sacramento right on there. And the Bay be beefing. But collectively, you're only talking about 2 or 3 places. The East Coast, you're really only talking about New York. We'll put Philly in there. That's fine. Maybe Boston.
Yeah.
That's fine too. The South is Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, everything to Texas.
Texas, yeah. Yeah, it's huge.
It's hard to have that much beef. If you look at the pockets of places that have multi-platinum, genre-changing musicians, Houston, New Orleans, twice. I don't understand why Baby. If Baby was like at least some sort of professional business person at all, he should be the chairman and CEO of all Universal.
Yeah.
I don't know who has sold more records than Baby.
Yeah.
Baby got all the Juvenile records, all the Hot Boy records, all the Wayne records, all the Drake records,
yeah,
all the Nicki Minaj records.
See, it's...
Who sells that many records and don't get to be the chairman CEO of everything?
That's so true.
I don't even know where. I have no idea where Cash Money's offices are.
Yeah.
I have never seen
Yeah.
anybody walk into Cash Money headquarters.
Yeah.
They should have the biggest headquarters. But
Yeah.
another story. New Orleans has that twice. Miami's got that multiple times. And then you have Atlanta, which is the hub of Black culture in America. Atlanta's 52% Black. Atlanta has CNN, Coca-Cola headquarters.
Yeah.
The second largest airport in the country. It's got freaking all Turner everything. It's got movies.
Yeah.
And it's got the second or third biggest music scene in the country.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a whole lot to get the South to be that much.
Yeah.
There's just too much room. There's too many different
yeah.
pieces that are going into this thing we're labeling this one place. And so you have a Black hub that's used to unity, where Martin Luther King went to school. They work together in a different way. So, you know, you're going to have a lot of people who don't fall off. Or when people do beef, the broader culture can withstand it. It's not, it doesn't fracture like Jay versus Nas, 50 versus Jay versus Nas, 50 versus 50 Sneak Dissing, 50 versus Nas, 50 versus Fat Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 5 boroughs versus 15 states.
Yeah. Not going to happen. Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking, you look at LA. I mean, LA has natural boundaries. They have natural cultural boundaries. You know which are the blood streets and the Crip streets. You know? Yeah. That's not the South.
Yeah.
And so I think the South has that advantage. And I think especially with the South being where most Black people in America live, we're talking about a Black medium, Black music.
Yeah.
You know, we will have our problems. We do have our challenges, but Black people only made this far by working together.
Yeah.
The civil rights era had a lot of collaboration across boundaries.
100%.
Malcolm and Martin might not like each other. They weren't shooting each other.
That's it. That's it. Justin, man, this is why I wanted you on the pod, man. For people who may just be getting introduced to Justin Hunte's content, this is what his content is, bro. Like, you bring a insight and deeper level to things that I'm not always aware of, and I really appreciate that with OutKast and the way you've broken down that Southern thing for me. Just incredible, bro. So big up. I really appreciated your chat on OutKast, man. We're going to leave it to the guys out there. Go out there, subscribe to the channel. Also, subscribe to Justin's channel as well. Justin, man, tell us, first of all, where can we find you on YouTube, socials, all that? And 2, man, what you got coming up, man? What's next up for you?
At the company man on everything. Spelled just how it sounds. Ain't no K's, ain't no A's, but there should be an E. Yeah. So, like I said, man, I'm celebrating a big, I guess, non-hip-hop win since we decided that yesterday. I'm now a television producer working on a show called Court Cam. That's been dominating my time the second half of this year in a great way. So you can catch me every Wednesday on A&E. Go listen to the packages I'm putting together. But no, between now and the end of the year, I have like 20 interviews that are going to drop on the channel. I have a new series that I'm doing on a new platform that I'll let you guys know about starting in January. And that is more commentary on life through the lens of hip hop, bridging things that are happening socially and from a societal standpoint. And connecting with things in music, but in a more truncated, direct fashion. Right? It's not necessarily as broadly speaking what people are used to from my previous breakdowns. And the breakdowns are coming back too. So
yes, bro. Yeah. I'm ready. I know.
So it's all happening.
I know non-hip hop fans that love the breakdown just because they're done so well. They're just argued differently. So people, go check that stuff out. Can I just say, just personal highlights, just as a fan, I have really enjoyed the R.A. the Rugged Man interview. I really enjoyed the Immortal Technique interview. I know you've done Lupe, Salam, Remy. Man, you've nailed it on the interview front, so go check those out, people. One thing I did want to say as well is big up, because in 2020, when the world has just been so tumultuous, it has been nice to hear some reasoned debate, chat, voices like yourself, man, be it on socials or be it just on YouTube, just chatting. I feel that discourse, and I feel like communication is vital right now to get information as well. So for all that, man, if you don't get love for that, you need more love for that. So I appreciate you, Mr. Hunt, for doing that, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you too, man. You have the best hip hop podcast out right now.
Oh, bro,
bar none. Yeah, absolutely my favorite. And the people that you're bringing into your community are people that have, literally made lives better. And they're only there because of the respect and care that they know you have for this culture. So salute to you and thank you.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Well, we'll finish the loving and we'll go off, man. But hopefully we'll catch you soon, Justin, man. Before you leave, I need to ask you one thing, though. I ask everyone they come in, man. What's the last great piece of music you heard? Could be old, could be new. Can't be OutKast, as we've talked about OutKast for a good over an hour now. But if there's the last piece of great music you heard.
I just submitted my list for Revolt too. For this year, my top 9. No spoilers.
Okay.
But the last great piece, I don't think I've been impressed, and I don't think I've been as equally impressed and surprised as I was about Busta Rhymes' ELE 2. Extinction Level Event 2. I don't have a history of thinking about Busta Rhymes as a really deep thinker in his music. No shots. It's not this. I don't really have a history of him touching on the things he touches on this album. There is nobody else who's making an album with the range of sound, styles, lyrics, and stories right now, this year.
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes still sounds like Busta Rhymes. In my opinion, the best he's ever been.
Yeah.
Period.
Wow.
This to me is the best Busta Rhymes ever sounded. This to me is the most surprising thing I've heard all year. From a lyric standpoint, production standpoint, style standpoint, timing standpoint.
Yeah.
Extinction Level Event 2. Last time was when we thought Y2K was going to be the problem. We thought the computers weren't going to be able to round up, and then everything's going to shut down.
Yeah.
He found a way to capture the stuff that's really going down in a way that feels, more mature than ever and fresher than ever at the same time. Outside of that, go check out that Conway. That's just amazing.
Ooh. 2 bombs, man. 2 bombs right there. Justin, loved that. And yes, definitely check out that Busta project. It is the bomb. Bro, thank you again. We will catch you soon. And hopefully we get you back on the pod, man. This is your second appearance. Let's make it a hat trick. Let's go for another one next year at some point.
I'm down, man. Anytime you call, I'm available. I apologize for having to reschedule this time.
No, it's all good, man. Wicked. Well, thank you, bro. And you take it easy and keep smashing it, bro. Peace.
All right, man. You too. Peace.
Wicked.